It was no accident. It was a test, quietly cruel, meticulously staged and laced with silent judgment. In the heart of a sprawling Virginia estate, beneath the glow of a hand-cut crystal chandelier, the master's study sat still. Its air held the faint scent of cedar and old books. On the far wall a safe, ancient, steel and imposing, stood wide open. Inside, stacks of $100 bills, glinting jewelry, a vintage Rolex, and a small box of diamonds. It was bait. He knew she'd be in this room today. He'd timed it perfectly. Her break always fell at 3:15. From the darkened corridor just outside the study, Henry Whitmore, billionaire investor, 63, greying temples and a heart worn thin by betrayal, watched from behind a carved mahogany archway. His gaze was cold, not from anger, but from the exhaustion of a man who trusted no one and needed proof that he still couldn't. And then she walked in. Her name was Aisha, 34, tall, graceful and soft-spoken, with skin the color of warm coffee and eyes that never quite gave away what she was thinking. She had been cleaning the Whitmore estate for 8 months, showing up like clockwork, never late, never idle, never bitter. A single mother of a teenage son and caretaker to her disabled brother, Aisha, bore her life like a soldier. No complaints, no shortcuts, no room for mistakes. To most, she was just the help. A figure who slipped between rooms with a mop, a dustcloth and silence. But to Henry, lately, she'd become something else. A question he couldn't stop asking himself. Would she take it? As Aisha stepped into the room and paused in front of the open safe, Henry held his breath. She stood still, looked, then slowly, almost reverently, reached out, not toward the money, but toward the handle of the safe. With deliberate care, she closed it, gently, locked it, then turned, looked around, and walked away. She never saw him standing there. Henry didn't move. Something inside him cracked, not because she passed the test, but because he realized she never even saw it as one. The money never tempted her, not because she didn't need it, he knew she did, but because some people don't steal, not out of fear, but out of dignity. That night Henry called his attorney. He set up a trust for Aisha's son, for her brother's care, and for Aisha herself, because in a world where everyone's watching what you do when the cameras are on, he saw who she was when no one was. People had stolen from Henry before, more than once. His ex-wife drained his accounts and his trust. Business partners forged signatures. Trusted aides leaked information to the press. Each betrayal had carved deeper into his soul than into his bank account. So, he stopped trusting. He built fortresses, not just in brick and surveillance systems, but inside himself. His estate became his sanctuary, his prison. The only people who came and went were on payroll. Then Aisha arrived. She was efficient, quiet, reserved, and frustratingly, irritatingly honest. She didn't try to charm him. She didn't linger. She didn't try to become part of his world. And that unsettled Henry more than he cared to admit. Because her kind of integrity, the quiet, natural kind, made his suspicion feel small and petty. So he set the trap. It was a Wednesday morning, 3 a.m., when he had the safe prepared. He instructed the cameras in the east hallway to be shut off for 1 hour. No recordings, no evidence. He left the safe wide open, its contents neatly arranged: cash, watches, a sapphire brooch, an heirloom coin pouch from his grandfather. And then he waited. At exactly 3:27 p.m., Aisha entered to dust the study, just as scheduled. She moved with the same calm rhythm as always, but when she noticed the open safe, her steps faltered. She froze. The afternoon sun sliced through the blinds and hit the steel door just right, glinting off the silver, illuminating the treasure inside like a spotlight on a stage. Aisha's eyes flicked to the hallway. Empty. Then back to the safe. And then something happened Henry couldn't have predicted. She exhaled sharply, like someone catching a moment of grief, and gently set her duster down on the edge of the desk. With slow, careful movements, she reached into her apron, pulled out a soft microfiber cloth, and began cleaning the rim of the open safe. Not the money, not the jewelry. Just the edges, like she'd treat any dusty surface in this house. She even adjusted the corner of a felt mat that had curled up slightly under a gold pocket watch. Then she closed the safe. Without hesitation, she turned the dial, locked it, and returned to her dusting, never once looking back. Henry stepped away from the archway, stunned. It wasn't just that she passed his test, it was that she never even paused to consider failing it. No greed, no calculation, no fear, just duty, dignity, and decency. That night, Henry couldn't sleep. He thought about Aisha's son, the one she mentioned in passing during a rare conversation. He thought about how she stayed late on Tuesdays because her brother's nurse arrived late. He thought about the way she smiled, just slightly, when the house was quiet and the sunlight came through the windows. By dawn, his lawyer had instructions. A full scholarship for her son, medical coverage for her brother, and a private letter to Aisha, sealed with the words he hadn't said out loud in over a decade. Thank you for reminding me that good still exists. She didn't touch the money. She didn't even flinch. Aisha simply wiped the dust from the steel edge of the safe with the same calm care she used on every other surface in the estate. But then, something happened. Henry hadn't anticipated. She paused. Her hand moved to her pocket. Slowly, she pulled out a small, time-worn photograph, faded at the edges, folded through the center. She looked down at it quietly, then glanced around the empty hallway again, as if needing to be sure she was alone. And with reverent hands, she placed the photo gently on the shelf beside the cash and the gold watch. In the photo were two people. One was a teenage boy, maybe 14, wearing a cracked football helmet and grinning ear to ear. Beside him was a man in a wheelchair, thin and tired-looking, but smiling with eyes full of pride. Henry didn't know them. But Aisha did. She whispered something, so softly that even Henry, standing just feet away, couldn't make out the words. Then she picked up the photo, kissed it lightly, folded it, and tucked it back into her pocket. Without a second glance at the safe's contents, she turned the steel wheel, closed the door, and went back to work. Henry stepped deeper into the shadows, breath caught somewhere between awe and shame. He had expected a flicker of temptation, a pause, maybe even the smallest reach, but what he saw was reverence, pain, and love held tightly by discipline. It was not greed he found in that room, but a quiet kind of sacred. That night, Henry didn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, the image of that photograph, that whispered moment, etched into him like scripture. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about her, about the quiet strength that never asked to be seen, and about the truth he'd been blind to. He had built his life to protect his wealth, but in doing so had almost missed the wealth of character standing under his own roof. The next morning, when Aisha arrived just after sunrise, she found an envelope resting on the marble kitchen counter. Her name, written in thick, deliberate pen strokes, Aisha. Inside was a single handwritten note. Integrity is priceless. Thank you for reminding me what it looks like. Henry Whitmore. But so is peace. And she had given him both. In the envelope, beneath the handwritten note, was a check, blank, signed, ready. Aisha stared at it, her breath caught. Her knees buckled slightly as she lowered herself into the nearest chair. For a long time she didn't move. Tears slid down her cheeks, quiet and unannounced. She pressed the letter to her chest as if holding on to something fragile and rare. This wasn't charity. It wasn't pity. It was acknowledgement, her brother's medication, her son's tuition, the overdue rent. All of it could vanish, not because she begged, not because she stole, but because when it mattered most, she chose character over desperation, even when no one was watching. That weekend, Henry Whitmore did something he hadn't done in decades. He left the estate, not for business, not for image, but to visit someone's home. He knocked on Aisha's front door, not as a boss but as a man trying to be better. He sat at her modest kitchen table, laughed with her son over a game of dominoes, and spoke with her brother like an old friend. Then he opened a folder. Inside were documents prepared to help her purchase a new home in a safer neighborhood. There was also an offer, head of household operations at the Whitmore estate, full benefits, flexible hours, and the freedom to care for her family without sacrificing her dignity. But more than a title, Henry gave Aisha something rarer: trust. Not the kind earned with time cards and contracts, but the kind born when someone proves who they are in silence. Sometimes the truest tests aren't passed with applause. They're passed in quiet moments, when no one's watching. And sometimes, the richest people aren't the ones with the fullest safes, but the ones who carry truth in their hearts. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to Echoes of Heart, where real stories remind us that humanity still shines in quiet places. Drop a comment below. What would you do if no one was watching?